here, very, very privileged with Colin Pink, owner of Colin Pink Sound. Colin is one of the world's leading sound engineers, sound mixers, sound designers for the world's most epic stages. You'll probably see him at every Hans Zimmer live tour show. On his Instagram, you'll know him by his socks, which are very famous. And in fact, Colin, you're here on your day off because you're incredibly busy in London this weekend doing what?
I'm in Hyde Park with the Bocelli show, and I'm looking after Catherine Jenkins and Hans Zimmer, and generally helping out and trying to be useful. So yes, it's a busy time, but it was great that I could make it down and listen to some lovely systems.
Fantastic. Well, we'll come on to the systems shortly. Just for the audience to know, I mean, you've got an amazing background, and some of these stories, people can go onto your website, find out about how you got into this, but some of those stories are those classic instances of just meeting the right people at the right time and getting the right gig.
Sure.
Terence Trent D'Arby, Guns N' Roses, and all of this started from school when you had to make a telephone ring?
Oh yes, yeah. I kind of started off in theatre, but always with a big interest in music, and I had no real knowledge of live events, I guess, apart from as a punter. And yeah, at school I was walking past the theatre. We were lucky enough to have one, and someone saw me, came out and said, "Oh, Colin, you're good at electronics. We need to make a phone ring. Can you help us?" You know, essentially. And so I went in and made their phone ring, and then, you know, just helped out, and suddenly realised that I was having fun. So went back the next day and kind of got into theatre purely by chance. I can't remember who actually asked me to make their phone ring, but I wish I could thank them. And yeah, got into kind of the technical side of theatre, lighting and sound at that point, and well, a bit of everything else. And then went to the Guildhall School of Music and Drama doing the technical theatre course, and that kind of led me to specialise in sound, although I still did a lot of lighting. And my first jobs were kind of, in those days, in a lot of theatres you did lighting and sound, but kind of veered off into the sound world. Eventually ended up at the National Theatre in London, where I stayed for 10 years. And it was really fortuitous in a way. For the majority of that time, Trevor Nunn was running the National, and he's known for doing big musicals. So I got into doing a lot of musical theatre work, and you know, the great thing about those is you're dealing with reasonable sized orchestras, and at the National we were lucky enough to have some very large orchestras, and you know, and then West End experience and some shows on Broadway, etc. Kind of got me into focusing more on the music side of events, and yes, I guess from there, George Fenton, who is an amazing composer, he was doing a tour of the original Blue Planet, a live orchestra tour around arenas with, you know, big screen projection of all the animals, etc. They're brilliant shows if you ever get a chance. And you know, because of my sort of experience, I got involved in that, and that kind of set me fully off on the line of sort of big scale events and large music shows.
And you've covered all sorts, from Brit Awards, MTV Awards, you did the 2012 London Olympics, and eventually, how did you get to work with one of the biggest film composers of the 20th century?
Well, so Hans Zimmer, that was on the back of the classical Brit Awards, which is an annual event at the Albert Hall, an award show. As you say, I since then look after the Brits as well, so do a bit of pop, a bit of classical, and I'm very lucky in that respect, because on those shows, because you've got about 10 or 12 different bands coming in with their own teams, you get to meet so many more people than you would just as a touring engineer. And of course you learn stuff from them, how they do things, and hopefully you can teach them some stuff. So it's a brilliant pool of resource. But working with Hans, he was basically at the Classical Brit Awards. I think he'd won an award and was doing a 20-minute medley of some of his stuff. And afterwards he was talking about whether, you know, he should do a show himself with Harvey Goldsmith. And of course, you know, they thought that was a very good idea, and that he should. And he basically said, to cut a long story very short, he said, well, apparently the classical Brit sounded good and I had fun, so can I use that audio team? And so, you know, I got the phone call of, do you want to go and help out mixing Hans Zimmer? And I didn't have to think that long about it. It was a definite yes.
And now you've toured all over the world, and although you're based in Portugal.
Yes, I used to live in London, and then moved to Portugal in the middle of COVID. Obviously, there weren't any live events, and you know, it just felt like a good move at the time for a number of reasons. But yeah, just had the time to do it.
And out of all these amazing venues you've been to, I know you prefer sort of mixing the sound according to the particular venue and the acoustics of each arena, but which one's your favourite?
Oh gosh, it's so difficult. Just to mention what you were saying earlier, the thing with live shows and travelling to these different venues is, I always think of what we do as site-specific art, and you have to make your show fit the venue you're in, because, you know, whether you like it or not, a show is going to sound very different, you know, in an 800-seater theatre to a 20,000-seater arena, or outside, or wherever it is, and everyone's perceptions of what it's going to sound like are different, and so you kind of have to take that into account, and not make the show the same as it sounded last night necessarily, but make it sound appropriate for the venue you're in. I think my favourite venue is probably the O2. Again, it's not for technical reasons. It's for it. You know, it's like coming home. It's my living room. I know it very well. I feel very comfy there. But the same could be said for the Albert Hall. On a technical point of view, the Ziggo in Amsterdam is one of the best, because it's incredibly dry, so it's very, very controlled, and you know, whatever you do just works. So that's kind of the technically best for me, but emotionally I think it's the O2 or the Albert Hall.
One of the signs of a master at work is making everything look incredibly easy. And so, you know, I've sat in the audience twice. It's an incredible experience. The acoustics are amazing. But when I see the control desk, it looks like a pilot's cockpit.
Sure.
And I'm thinking, you know, what if something went slightly wrong, or something didn't work quite right? I mean, it's so technical. I'm assuming once in a blue moon something doesn't work quite correctly. And can you remember a time where something went terribly wrong, and how do you get past that? How does the show go on?
Well, lots of backups. I think it is. It's funny you say it's like a pilot's cockpit. My father was a pilot, so I kind of grew up with that, and he was an instructor. So I don't know if that has any bearing on, you know, feeling at home with technology. And the great thing about digital desks, they kind of look complicated, but the beauty with them is because you can move things around on the surface. You can basically, even though on Zimmer we've got 260 odd input channels,
Wow.
at any one time I can have all the sort of ones I know I need sort of directly in front of me. So that makes the workflow much simpler and easier. And it basically frees up your kind of processing brain, so you don't have to think about what you're doing so much. It's just literally under your fingertips. So that helps. And I think when things go wrong, which of course they do, you try and back up as many systems as you can, you know, especially, and I think, you know, shows like the Brit Awards and the EMAs are great training grounds for that philosophy, because there's so much that can go wrong when you've got multiple bands coming on and off stage, and festivals as well. Slightly lower profile maybe, but just as complex. And you just get into a rhythm of how to think about plan A for about 10 minutes, and then plan B, C, D, E, F, G, you know, is where you're actually spending a lot of your energy. And just having good teams is important. And when things go wrong, you know, it depends what. Sometimes, you know, a radio mic will fail, or a microphone, and, you know, you just have to quickly and calmly just try and work out what's gone wrong first, and then you can, you know, deal with fixing it. Or if you don't know what's wrong, just go to a backup system and see if that helps. One of the worst situations we had was at the Brit Awards, and of course we had multiple bands, some of which had brought in a lot of their own equipment. And after their set, I won't mention any names, but someone on a visiting team was packing up and pulled a cable of theirs that had got wrapped around the main circuit breaker for the PA.
Oh.
So they switched the PA off halfway through another act.
Oh dear.
So everything went very, very silent. The irony was the artist on stage didn't notice, because he was on in-ears, and so carried on, which was a good thing because it was fine for broadcast and everything else. You know, and it was probably only 20 seconds, but it felt like a decade, as the computer, you know, we found another power source and plugged it in, and it rebooted.
Wow.
But, you know, these things happen, and in a way that's the excitement of live events, is things will go wrong. And when they do, you know, you just have to get on with it. And the audience, I don't think, minds, because it kind of makes it real. It's like they love it if a musician, you know, hits a bum note or whatever, because it's real life. And I always remember back in the theatre days, there's, you know, people who specifically book the first preview show of a production rather than waiting until it's settled, because it's more fun. You know, there's more jeopardy. Stuff is going to go wrong. And, you know, that's why people love live events, I think, because there is that excitement, because you're never quite sure what's going to happen.
Wow. A lot of shows now, I think
Mm-hmm.
audience members going to shows, and particularly the theatre, everyone's looking for sort of more immersion and having probably more interaction, probably with the acoustics. And maybe this is wrong to think, but I've always thought that, particularly nowadays, is there more overlap between mixing in the studio for, say, multi-channel film and what goes on at the live event, or is it still sort of completely different art?
Well, it's a completely different art, but I think you're actually getting both. Home cinema especially has come on so well. The expectations of kind of quality have gone up, and so in live you either need to make something even better, or go completely different. And I think some people do both. So you can, a kind of intimate unplugged concert for 200 is one way of going, and that still works. It doesn't all have to be incredible big sound. It can be very small and intimate, or it can be very large and immersive. And I think the great thing about shows going either direction, and actually on film or any medium, what people are after is connection. It's an emotional connection, and there's a great number of ways of doing that. That can be on a small intimate scale or on a huge scale. And what's nice about the huge scale is you've got the intimate emotional connection between the band and the audience, but also the audience and themselves, because they emotionally feed off each other. And you can do that with sound, but it's the whole mix of sound, lighting, it's the visual and the audio experience, and how those driven together can help people feel.
Now, if anyone's following your Instagram, you shoot some really great venues, and often the most colourful thing are your socks.
Yes.
So I've got to find out. You're here now, and I can ask you now.
Okay.
Where did the sock shot concept come from?
Where did the sock thing come from?
So I think you're the only person in the whole wide world who does this. So what is all that about?
So, well, it just sort of happened. I think I never mix with my shoes on.
Right. Okay.
That's the first thing.
Okay.
So I think because, health and safety, you have to wear your steel toe cap boots and all that around. And when you finally get to do the show, your feet are tired. And so I have always taken my shoes off, even in my theatre days when you're sitting down in a nice comfy place with a carpet. But I always mix with my shoes off. And I think that, coupled with technicians, we always tend to dress in black because that's sort of what's expected. I ended up just wearing colourful socks because, you could, essentially. But the whole sock shop thing came about because, everyone, takes a photo of today's office or today's arena, whatever. And I guess because I kind of hang out without my shoes on, one day I put my feet up on the desk. I will demonstrate. If that was a sound desk, I was relaxing. I was like this, waiting for the show. And I just thought I'd take a picture of that because that was more interesting than, the usual. So
Fantastic.
it was a picture of my socks and the desk. And, someone said, "Oh, that was great. What socks are you wearing today?" In a comment. So I did another one. and I've been doing it ever since.
You have, and now it makes perfect sense. We love the sock shot.
That's how it happens.
We love the sock shot.
The funny thing about the sock shots is now I have audience members coming up to me who I don't know, giving me socks as presents because they've come across it on social media for whatever reason. So I now I basically don't need to buy socks anymore.
No, and if all the designer sock manufacturers eventually watch this, you're an influencer of socks.
There you are. I'm a sock influencer.
There we go. Now, you're, as I mentioned before, you're incredibly busy. You travel all over the world. You've got a really crazy, hectic international schedule in the next coming weeks or so. What are you up to in the next few months? What sort of things are you going to be doing?
Oh gosh, so after Hyde Park I'm doing two concerts with Catherine Jenkins in the next few days. So one's in Wales, and then we fly to Vietnam for one day to do a concert. and then fly back. But I go straight to Malta for the Isle of MTV, which is a big, it's a free concert for 40,000 in Valletta Square, which is a live broadcast and lots of fun. Then I'm going on holiday with the family, which would be lovely, up to Denmark actually. And then we get back into, Hans is doing an American tour, September, October, so that's happening. Then after that, about a month later, we're doing The World of Hans Zimmer, which is his more symphonic show, which he doesn't attend himself, but he's curated and does all the links. Yeah, that's a 56-piece orchestra with a rhythm section, as opposed to a core band of 19 and a smaller orchestra, which is his live show. But between those two, I'm doing the MTV European Music Awards up in Manchester this year, and the premiere of Top Gun Maverick live in concert. So for those that don't know, they're brilliant events. It's basically a film showing with a live orchestra doing all the music, and I do quite a few of them. We do quite a few of the Bond films, and Titanic's out there, and Indiana Jones and Star Wars, and yeah, we're doing the world premiere of Top Gun Maverick at the Albert Hall, which should be fun.
That should be absolutely incredible.
So yes, highly recommend those. In the same way as what I was saying earlier, people like live events because you get a more tangible emotional connection, and the same things happen, I think personally, with these cinemas with live orchestras. You get a much better sense of emotional connection with the film. So yeah, well worth coming to see.
Really interesting. I think my daughter has booked to go and watch Blade Runner with the live orchestra.
Amazing! Yeah.
So now I get that. So Maverick should be superb. It's one of my favourite films. Talking about emotional experiences, using the Denmark reference. So on your day off, you took time out to come and visit Steinway Lyngdorf in Essex. There's a range of different systems you heard. You listened to the Lyngdorf audio systems, the Q100s, the Steinway systems upstairs. I've got to ask, out of all the stuff you listened to, what's your general feedback? And then we're going to ask you about what your favourite moments were.
Oh gosh, kind of so many.
Any surprises? Anything that you?
Yeah, so I on the side am a bit of a hi-fi buff. Well, in my time I've had a few systems, but I tend to love electrostatic hybrids. I love valve amps. I love posh record players, but I also like super fast digital clean systems, and they all have their place. And I think what you've done here is the amps are very, very fast and very clean. It's very evident, and that's such a great starting point. Speakers, pretty much all ribbon tweeters. I mean, not exclusively, but again, it all helps make things sound open. I'm all for things disappearing. I think people listen to music because they want to listen to the music, and although it's brilliant to geek out listening to all this amazing tech, actually at the end of it, the tech's job is to disappear and leave you with, I'll come back to it, an emotional connection with the music. And I think your systems are really good at that. And what was fascinating, and sorry if this is getting a bit nerdy, the reason I like electrostatic panels is they're dipole. You've got as much energy coming forward as you do backwards, and what it does is it opens up the sound stage and gives you a lot of depth. And what's interesting, and I haven't seen before, is people doing that with conventional drivers, for want of a better word. And you are doing that, and it works in exactly the same way as it does with panels. It completely opens up that sound stage and gives you depth, and at which point everything becomes more real, at which point the speakers disappear. And I forget the name of them or the number, but the little ones, as I call them.
What we're going to do is, in a second, I'm going to ask you to go upstairs.
Yeah.
I'm going to ask you to just go to your favourite system and explain why.
Ah, okay. So here we are upstairs in the Steinway rooms, which is just amazing. We started off with these. Again, I don't know if you can see from that angle, ribbon tweeters, 6-inch driver. There is another driver at the back in the bottom end. The first thing to say about the whole range is how elegant they are. And having said that, don't take my word for it, because I'm not very visual. But the sound of these, they just disappear kind of acoustically, really nice. We then moved on to the bigger ranges, as it were, and again, these are infinite baffle sealed boxes, if you can say that. Dual 12s, you've got a lot more depth. Just great boxes. And then the big change happened. Me going back to dipoles, and my love of how they do it. We've actually got rear-firing tweeters, an open-backed mid-range, and rear-firing subs. And it's astonishing and really interesting to hear the difference between a more conventional sealed box and an open box. And they've taken that concept way, way further at the other end of the room, if we can just walk down there, with the D series, which are just staggeringly good. They have all the benefits of an open baffle design in the same way that panel speakers do. There's basically no rear box, so all of the drivers are exposed, and yeah, the soundstage just opens up fully, and they just sound miraculous. Amazing, amazing boxes.
Did you play with the little remote control?
Did I play with the remote control? No, I didn't.
It's nice 24-karat gold-plated remote with Swiss bearings.
What's not to love? Amazing. So, favourite speakers. I'm going to be naughty and cheat, if I may, because the D is astonishing, and I would love it in my living room.
And me.
and many others, I think.
However, Aisha's favourite as well.
I am going to take you over here because actually in my studio I would like this system here, which again is an amazing thought. The tweeters are actually open backed and they have a little deflector, so it's not a dipole like the others, but it's side firing as well, and it just opens up the sound stage in the same way. And these boxes are tiny, yet it's the biggest sound stage I've heard in a long time, you know, and that's including some very large boxes. So what's nice is within the range you've got something that fits a lot of different spaces and a lot of different applications. And I think studio cinemas, I mean, it's classic. If you're in a room this size, this is the perfect system, and obviously the Ds wouldn't fit. you know, if you have a larger space, then that's what you want. So either way, any system in this building is very, very nice.
There you go, you've heard it from Colin Pink, the sound master, sound mixer, independent review. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you for having me. It was
always a pleasure, always
amazing.
welcome here, and we wish you all the best with the amazing work that you're going to be doing in the next few months, next few years, and we're very exciting to see what you come up with next.